For the past 3 years, I have made it my goal to make sure that everybody knows the wonders that is Ascendance of a Bookworm. This is a series that the moment I watched the first season, I was hooked and I loved it, every single minute of it. It captured my heart with its fantastic storytelling, characters, and its unique vantage point. And it's honestly one of those series that no matter how many times I suggested to people, every single time somebody comes back, it's always, thank you so much for suggesting this show. It's always positive. And I can't say that really about any other show. It's typically, hey, I tried this, but it didn't work out for me. No, it's always positive when people come back. And that warms my heart, truly. And as the season 3 comes to an end with its unfortunately short run of 10 episodes, and I'm absolutely heartbroken that it's come to an end, and I'm desperately pleading for season 4, I'm here to give my review on the series as a whole and let you guys know why you should be checking out this series if you've not already. So with all that said, let's jump right into it. To get people caught up that have not looked into Ascendance of Bookworm, it essentially follows a girl who is a bookworm who unfortunately passes away in our modern times. She's then transported into the body of a girl named Myne in another world. Now, the unique thing about the body that she's placed inside of, this girl named Myne, she's very young. And she's also very sickly. She's very frail. She can't even move around on her own without falling victim to this illness that she has. Additionally, Myne is a part of a commoner's family within this domain. So you have nobles that are usually the rich people with magical power, and then you have the commoners who are poor and that mostly serve those people. And despite all of these kind of things bogging her down, the fact that she doesn't have much money, the fact that she's very ill, she still has this one thing that's her driving force, and that is that she wants to find a book. She loves books so much, she finds solace in that. This one comfort that she had in her previous life, because she was just kind of obsessed with reading books in her previous life, she wants that here. And unfortunately, yes, books are very expensive in this world, and the only people that really have books are those that are nobles. But again, despite this, she doesn't let it keep her down. If she can't buy a book, if she can't have a book, if she can't even just go to a library, there's no libraries here, she's going to make her own book. So this is where we have this girl as Myne, now deciding to use all the knowledge from her previous life, a modern times world, taking that knowledge of how books are made and essentially making her own. Taking all these technologies and printing methods and really putting them into play in this new world. And obviously, due to this, getting the attention of a lot of different people, including merchant guilds and additionally, eventually, the nobles. And as we get into season 2 and get into season 3, we start to learn a little more about the illness that's affecting Myne, this devouring, and what she needs to do essentially to prevent it from killing her. And this gets her kind of tied up and pulled into the politics of the church itself. So with that synopsis out of the way, let's get into why I love Ascendance of a Bookworm so much. This is a series that just is so unique. And it's really unfortunate because it obviously has that stigma about it that it is an isekai. And I would argue that it is definitely not the sum of an isekai. Typically with isekais, you have, boy goes to the other world, gets harem, is super powerful, takes on all the bad guys, takes down the demon lord. That's typically your isekai fare, but this is definitely not that. Yes, you do have some sort of power that is involved with Myne's illness, the devouring. Yes, you have her bringing over technology from modern times into this world to sort of give it a little bit of a technology boost, but it's never the sum of the story itself. It's so much more about Myne. It's so much more about the influences that she has, the people around her, the stirring of those in power and those around her due to the information, the knowledge that she actually has. And this is something that we're getting even more of as we get into season 3. So much of it is about, obviously, the people that would be affected by her introducing these more efficient methods and what they think about that. What is the guild that makes inks? Think about the idea of her producing her own inks. There's so many moving parts and so many different people involved when a book is created that obviously the idea of mass producing a book would put so many people under in their jobs. When it takes somebody that makes the binding, somebody that hand writes all the letters of every single page, the people that draw the crowning around the page themselves, the ink companies, the book companies, the manufacturing of the pages themselves, everything takes so much time and process and money that if she comes in with this idea of doing mass producing presses, it's obviously going to create a lot of question marks around people that have a lot of power and a lot of money. And yes, ultimately involving those with the actual power itself, both by status, by the nobles, and the fact that they have magic, they have power. And I think that's really the driving power of why I love this series so much. It's Myne. Myne is why I love this show so much. Myne is such a great character, and the fact that she's such a bright-natured person. And what's funny is what actually makes her the most special is that she's selfish. She's a very selfish main character. Everything she does is for her own benefit. She wants books. She will get books. She sees books. She wants to read books. Everything else is just noise to her. But it's not to say that she's heartless. Whenever there's things around her, yes, she might use that as an excuse to help them, but she's not heartless. When people are in pain around her, she really wants to help. And this is something that is slowly, even more so, becoming solidified because she's realizing what's important around her. In her previous life, she shunned everything but her books. And this has become a regret of hers as she relives those images of her mother. Her mother that was always reaching out to her, but she always had a book in her face. She always ignored her mother. And she never wants to, even though she doesn't state it, she never wants to make that mistake again. So those around her that's important to her, she cherishes. And again, technically, a lot of the times, making it an excuse that it's just something that's going to distract her. When they have this whole situation about the orphanage in this church, she decides to go help them. And the way she puts it is that I have to help them because I can't focus on reading my books if I know that's going on. I can't get my mind off of it. So let's handle the situation. But it's always in a good way. She's helping these children, pulling them out of the darkness of being basically neglected and helping them find a purpose and find something to work on, give them benefit, give them achievement. And additionally with season 3, I think Myne shined the most because what I kind of realized at this point is that the greatest thing about Myne is, and I hate to say this, is that she's always suffering. Myne is internally suffering, and I think that makes the fact that she tries to be so bright so much more impactful. Honestly, we've seen nothing but suffrage in Myne. She comes to this world, leaving behind her previous life, leaving behind her books that she cherished so much, and yes, eventually regretting leaving behind her mother. She's put into a poor family with no money. They have this really small house. Yeah, you would argue that's a good thing because they're nice and tight-knit, but they don't have much. They don't have all the niceties of a noble family. Again, she's in a very frail body. I argue, and they haven't revealed this, so it's not spoilers, I argue that Myne died on that day that she came into Myne's body. She's very sick. She's very ill. She's always in the looming threat of dying the next day. The moment that she runs, she could die. She's carried everywhere because she can't do things on her own. She just wants this one outlet, which is the book. And every time it seems like she establishes something, it gets pulled away from her. She establishes a family in this new life, and it gets pulled away from her. She gets thrown inside the church, stuck there, alone in winter. She finally creates this whole printing process, and it immediately gets pulled from her. The moment that she establishes her new norms, she gets pulled out of it. I argue this idea, this concept, that she's essentially isekai'd over and over again, pulled from her roots, pulled from her normalcy into something else without her own control. And I think because of despite that, we constantly see her walking forward. Yes, it's technically to her books. She's constantly walking forward to the next goal, the next purpose in her life, the next group of people that she wants to help. That's what makes her such a fantastic character, and I love her to death. It's honestly easy to forget how much she's suffering because she smiles so much, because she's such a bright character. Again, Myne is why I love this show so much. It's because I can never really find issue with her. Every decision she makes kind of makes sense to me. She's never really ever at fault for her decisions. Now, granted, she is oblivious at times, and I think that's really just the nature of her being a bookworm. She doesn't realize when something is really bad because she either doesn't have knowledge of it in this new world, or she's just kind of oblivious to it because of her nature. And that's not even to get started. I've been talking all this time about Myne, and that's not even get started with all the other characters. I love every character in this show and this story. Now, minus that stupid high priest, Santa Claus, he can go away, but everybody is so fascinating. I think the reason why, and a really good example of a great character in this story has always been Ferdinand. I think Ferdinand is such a beautifully done character. And why I say that is that Ferdinand almost seems as if he is Myne's only companion. He's the only one that truly understands who Myne is. And you often see them alone together talking about things, and it always seems like these two are just so great together. They're just such a fun little couple here. But then every now and then the story reminds you that Ferdinand, his priority is not Myne. The writer didn't create Ferdinand to be Myne's puppet. Ferdinand's existence in the story is not to make Myne happy. Ferdinand's goal, Ferdinand's purpose, is to protect the domain. And yes, technically, Myne's situation is in effect a threat to the domain. And so every now and then when we get this feeling that he's doing things to help Myne, he's putting her in positions that she needs things, he helps her with things, he guides her and all this kind of stuff. But when push comes to shove, he will always remind Myne that the moment you become a threat, I will be the first person to draw my sword. Like, he will strike her down if she becomes uncontrollable or she gets into the hands of those that will threaten the domain. He's kind of a reminder that this world is not all about fluff and happiness. That people will use Myne for wrong purposes. They will either use her knowledge in her modern time, or they will use her power as a devouring against the domain. And so every decision that Ferdinand makes is to the safety of Myne. He does have her safety in mind, but it's not to make her happy, it's to protect the domain. And I think the writer's willingness to do that, to have a character that's kind of beloved. Ferdinand, honestly, is a beloved character. I think besides Myne, he is one of the best characters in the show. But despite that, he does have his own priorities. He does have his own goals, his own desires that he will seek out, even if it is to the detriment of Myne. And this is the case with every single character of the story. And it shows me that the writer's creating a breathing world of characters that aren't just there to serve whatever whims Myne wants. They're not there for the sake of Myne. They're there because they're characters and they're people within this world. That yes, all have their own desires, their own goals, and yes, sometimes are very selfish. And yes, in this season, getting Sylvester, which I thought was a goofball, and I thought that he was going to be just there to poke and prod at Myne, which I absolutely love because not many characters really do, you know, poke and prod at Myne as a character. But then getting into him as a character and everything they reveal around him was absolutely fantastic. We got so much more out of Delia this season, really getting into her and Myne really trying to help her focus on something besides becoming a concubine to some dirty noble. And yes, still having those moments where you're like, don't get Delia involved. She is just going to betray you, and yet Myne keeps pushing towards her. It's a living, breathing world that I think this writer is so good at creating. And I love the fact that as the story goes along, it's revealing things as it goes along rather than creating a bunch of question marks. It's a series that I love just for the fact that unlike a lot of other shows, they get so caught up in creating as many questions and as many mysteries as possible, but never answering any of it. Ascendance of a Bookworm takes its time and reveals things piece by piece so that you never feel like you are completely lost as to what's going on. Yes, there's still some mysteries. You don't know what this person's doing behind the backgrounds, and you don't know what the identity of this person is, but it never makes you feel lost. I never feel like when a season ends that I'm going, they never answered all these questions. It always gives you what you need at what times to really give you a perspective on what's going on in the world. And I absolutely adore the writer for that. Even though, yes, I want more. I want season 4 so bad. But with that said, I will put an end to this. This is one of those series that no matter how much I talk about it, I will never do it justice. I highly recommend you checking out Ascendance of a Bookworm. It is a series that I absolutely adore. It's easily up there as my favorite isekai of all time, even though, like I said, I don't want to call it an isekai because I think that's just giving it undue treatment that I think so many other isekais are doing their own thing. This one's doing its own thing. Please, if you've not already, go check it out. Even still, I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this series. Did you check it out because of me? I love hearing from people that go and check out my suggestions, and they absolutely love it. It means the world to me. Additionally, if you want to get your friends into this series, make sure to share this video out. Additionally, if you love this content and you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And I would deeply appreciate it if you consider supporting us through Patreon or through our tips link. We also have a super thanks button down there. I definitely appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.